The rain fell lightly on the city's cobblestone streets, like glistening teardrops on the rosy cheeks of a young maiden. In the luxurious office on the top floor of the Eternity Tower, Alexander sat in contemplation, his sharp, cold gaze skimming over the dancing numbers on the computer screen. The man with neatly combed dark brown hair and a fitted black suit exuded an air of power and solitude. He was Alexander Vương, the city's youngest billionaire, known to the world as a symbol of success, yet no one understood the profound emptiness within his soul. The ringing of the phone interrupted his train of thought. An unknown number. He frowned, his slender fingers hesitating over the screen before picking up. A woman's urgent voice came through from the other end, carrying a desperation that made his heart stir faintly. "Mr. Vương, this is Dr. Lin from Tum An Hospital. We urgently need a blood donor with the rare ABRH blood type. Our 5-year-old girl. Her condition is critical. You are one of the few compatible donors on our list. Please help us." Alexander fell silent, his breath catching for a moment. A 5-year-old child. He wasn't the type to be easily swayed by emotions, but Dr. Lin's trembling voice, like a sharp dagger, stirred a fragment of memory he had tried to bury. Days of passionate love, the radiant smiles of a woman who once meant the world to him. He pushed the thought aside, his voice low but resolute. "I'll be there immediately." The Rolls-Royce glided smoothly along the wet road, neon lights reflecting on the car's windows like stray stars. Alexander stared out the window, his heart like an ocean roiled by waves. He didn't often donate blood, but something compelled him to act this time. Perhaps it was the doctor's voice's urgency, or he wanted to escape the soulless numbers in his office. Tum An Hospital came into view, with its stark white corridors and the distinct antiseptic smell. Alexander walked with purpose, each step carrying the aura of a leader. The nurses' glances followed him, a mix of curiosity and admiration, but he paid them no mind, focused solely on his purpose. Dr. Lin, a middle-aged woman with a kind face, greeted him in the waiting area. "Thank you, Mr. Vương, for coming. The girl is in the intensive care unit. Without a timely blood donation, I'm afraid." She paused, her eyes heavy with concern. Alexander nodded, needing no further explanation. He followed her to the lab for a blood test, his mind drifting between the present and the past. As the needle pierced his skin, he felt no pain, only a strange sense of emptiness. How long had it been since he allowed himself to feel anything beyond work? The blood donation process was swift. When it was over, Dr. Lin clasped his hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You haven't just saved a life. You've given hope to an entire family. I can take you to meet the girl's mother if you'd like." Alexander gave a faint smile, his voice calm but polite. "No need. I just wanted to help." But deep inside, a spark of curiosity flickered. Who was the girl's mother? He wanted to know, yet his heart was beating faster than usual. As Dr. Lin led him to a small room, he heard a child's clear, innocent laughter. The door opened, and Alexander's world seemed to stop. Maya stood there with curly black hair and large, anxious eyes, the woman who had once held his entire heart, who had shattered it. With her smooth, dusk-like skin, Maya was holding a small girl on the hospital bed. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and time seemed to freeze. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment, share your thoughts, and follow to catch the next parts. Every moment of Alexander and Maya's journey will unfold promising deep emotions and surprises. Join their dramatic adventure. The soft white light from the hospital ceiling illuminated Maya's face, highlighting the delicate features Alexander had once etched deeply into his memory. Her eyes, like two lost stars in the night, now gazed at him filled with astonishment and an unspoken pain. Alexander stood frozen at the doorway, his heart gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Time, which he thought had erased everything, was mocking him, pulling him back to those old days when love shone as brightly as the sun. Maya gently released the little girl on the hospital bed, her hands trembling as she softly stroked the child's tightly curled hair. The girl with rosy cheeks and large round eyes was fast asleep, unaware of the fateful collision between the two adults beside her. Alexander wanted to say anything to break the stifling silence, but his throat felt constricted. He could only stand there, his usually sharp, cold eyes brimming with emotions. "Alexander." Maya's voice was soft like a fleeting breeze, yet enough to make his heart quiver. She called his name the way she used to in those golden afternoons by the river, when they held hands and dreamed of a future without distance. But now her voice carried a hint of detachment, a touch of caution, as if she feared a single wrong word could shatter everything. He stepped forward, his leather shoes echoing on the hospital floor, stark, like the beating of his heart. "Maya," he replied, his voice low, trying to conceal the emotions surging within. "Are you okay?" A foolish question, he knew, but he couldn't think of anything else to say. How could he ask her about the years gone by, why she left, and the man he once saw her leaving a hotel with that night? Maya pressed her lips together, her gaze sweeping over him before settling on the girl lying in the bed. "I'm fine," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "Thank you for coming, for saving her." Her gratitude was sincere, yet it cut into Alexander's heart like a sharp blade. He wanted to ask why she was here, why she was this girl's mother, but he only nodded, his hands tightening in the pockets of his suit jacket. They stood there in the small hospital room, like two lost planets so close, yet separated by 1,000 miles. Alexander looked at her, searching her eyes for traces of the girl he once loved. Maya was still beautiful in a way that made his heart ache. Her smooth, dusk-like skin glowed like the light of sunset, her complete lips pressed together as if hiding secrets. But there was something different, a strength, a resilience he hadn't seen before. She was no longer the Maya of old, the girl who always wore a radiant smile by his side. She was now a mother, carrying burdens he couldn't imagine. "The girl, is she your daughter?" Alexander finally spoke, his voice hoarse, as if it took immense effort to utter the question. He didn't know what answer he expected, but when Maya nodded, her eyes glinting with a flicker of pain, he felt his heart constrict. "Yes, she's my daughter. Her name is Lily." Maya replied, her voice gentle when she spoke of the girl. She lightly brushed a hand over Lily's forehead, shielding her from the world. Alexander followed the gesture, and a strange feeling stirred within him. He couldn't explain it, but Lily's eyes, though closed in sleep, sparked a vague sense of connection in him. "Will she be okay?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He didn't want to reveal the turmoil inside, didn't want Maya to see him drowning in the painful memories of the day she left. Maya looked up, her eyes meeting his, and in that moment it felt as if the world contained only the two of them. "I hope so," she whispered. "Thanks to you, she has a chance." Her words pierced through Alexander's chest like an arrow. He wanted to ask more about her life and the years he wasn't there. But then hurried footsteps echoed from the hallway, and a nurse stepped in, interrupting the fragile moment. "Ms. Maya, the doctor needs to see you to discuss Lily's condition," the nurse said, her eyes flicking toward Alexander with a hint of curiosity. Maya nodded, turning to him with a faint smile. "I have to go. Thank you again, Alexander." She left him standing there, his heart heavy with 1,000 unspoken questions. He watched her retreating figure, feeling as though he had just rediscovered a piece of himself, yet it was slipping through his fingers again. Alexander stood motionless in the hospital room, his gaze still fixed on the spot where Maya had just disappeared. Her footsteps mingled with the chaotic rhythm of his heartbeat, like a melancholic melody echoing from the past. The room now fell silent, filled only with the steady hum of machines and the gentle breathing of little Lily sound asleep. But in Alexander's mind, a storm of memories was brewing, pulling him back to the days he once thought would last forever, until they shattered like soap bubbles under the sun. Alexander and Maya were two perfect pieces of a vibrant love story 6 years ago. He was a young man brimming with ambition, just stepping into the world of business with grand dreams. She was a woman with smooth, dusk-like skin and a smile as bright as sunlight, carrying the freedom and passion of youth. They met at an art exhibition, where Maya's gaze cut through him like a beam of light, piercing the darkness. From that moment, Alexander's heart belonged to her wholly and irrevocably. Their time together was a string of sweet memories, like rose petals drifting gently on a still lake. They strolled hand in hand down tree-lined streets, exchanging promises under the moonlight. With her flowing curly hair and voice as soft as the breeze, Maya always made Alexander feel like the luckiest man alive. He had dreamed of a home filled with her presence, children with her radiant smile, their laughter echoing through a house bathed in light. But then one fateful evening destroyed everything. Alexander still remembered that night vividly, when rain poured as if to wash away the world. He stood outside a luxurious hotel waiting for Maya as usual. But instead of her familiar figure, he saw her step out arm in arm with another man. Once reserved solely for him, her smile shone brightly beside a stranger. Alexander's heart tore apart. Blinded by jealousy and pain, he didn't wait for an explanation or give her a chance to clarify. He turned his back and walked away, severing all contact. He didn't know that the man was Maya's close friend, someone she had met to discuss an art project. He didn't know that Maya had stood in the rain for hours afterward, desperately calling his name. And he certainly didn't realize that when she left the city, she carried a secret, a tiny life, the crystallization of their love. Alexander sat on the chair beside Lily's bed, his hands clasped tightly to restrain the emotions threatening to spill over. The image of Maya today, strong yet deeply wounded, made him unable to stop blaming himself. He had let a misunderstanding steal the love of his life. He had let pain guide him, condemning them both to years of loneliness. But what hurt most was Lily's eyes. Though closed in sleep, they carried a familiar quality, like a mirror, reflecting a piece of himself. He stood and walked to the hospital's small balcony, where the night breeze carried the chill of rain. The city stretched out before him, its twinkling lights like lost stars, yet they couldn't soothe the emptiness in his heart. He wondered if he had paused that day and listened to Maya, would things have been different? Could he have kept her by his side, instead of leaving her to face unknown hardships alone? At that moment, Alexander felt a fierce longing to right his wrongs and understand more about Maya Lily and what had happened in the past 6 years. But he was also afraid that the truth would bring even greater pain. He didn't realize that at this very moment, fate was quietly weaving a new thread, drawing him and Maya closer, separated only by the fragile barrier of a hospital door. He turned back his gaze, resting on Lily. The girl stirred slightly, her small lips moving as if dreaming of something. Alexander smiled, a sad but determined smile. No matter how painful the past, he knew he could no longer run from it. Perhaps this unexpected reunion wasn't just about saving Lily, but also a chance to save his own heart. The early morning sunlight slipped through the hospital window, casting faint golden streaks across the cold floor. Alexander stood silently by the bed, his gaze fixed on little Lily, who slept soundly with steady breaths. Her delicate face, long curved lashes, and softly pink lips were like a pure painting that stirred unnamed emotions in his heart. But deep within his chest, a silent undercurrent churned, pulling him into wordless questions about Maya and the years that had passed. The door creaked open, and Maya stepped in, bringing a gentle breeze like the scent of lavender. She wore a simple cream-colored sweater, yet her beauty lit up the room. With her were 5 other children, their radiant faces with tightly curled hair and sparkling eyes. They chattered, calling Mommy, and gathering around Lily's bed, each showing their love for their little sister in their way. Alexander stood frozen, struck by the scene before him. The children, 5 boys and girls aged 5 to 6, carried a vitality that filled him with admiration and heartache. Maya noticed his presence, her eyes flickering briefly before she offered a faint smile. "Alexander, you're still here." Her voice was gentle, but carried a hint of distance, as if she were trying to build an invisible wall between them. He nodded, striving to keep his tone calm. "I wanted to make sure Lily's okay." But the truth was he couldn't leave or tear his eyes away from her and the children bustling around the bed. "These are my children," Maya said, her gaze sweeping over each child with boundless love. Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma, and Lily, the youngest. She introduced each name with pride, but to Alexander, her words felt like an invisible dagger piercing his heart. Her children. Those words confirmed that Maya had built a new life, a family he wasn't part of. He forced a smile, but it was stiff, masking the pain spreading through his chest. "They're adorable," he said, his voice low, his eyes drifting over each child. Ethan, the eldest, looked at him with curious eyes. Noah, slightly younger, was busy adjusting Lily's blanket. Liam told Ava and Emma a story with a radiant smile, making the 2 girls giggle. Something about their faces stirred a strange sense of familiarity in Alexander, as if he were looking into a fractured mirror reflecting lost pieces of himself. Maya said, "They're my whole world." Her voice soft but resolute. She sat beside Lily, gently stroking the girl's hair. Her eyes filled with love. Alexander watched her, his heart gripped by a feeling both sweet and bitter. He had once dreamed of a family with Maya, of children who would carry her smile and his strength. But now she had a family. He was merely an outsider, a shadow from her past. He wanted to ask about the man who had claimed her heart, the father of these children, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he watched silently, trying to etch every moment into his memory. The way Maya tenderly wiped the sweat from Lily's forehead, the way she smiled when Ethan talked about a bird outside the window, the way she hugged Ava when the girl nestled into her arms, all of it made him realize that Maya had become a strong woman, a resilient mother, far beyond the girl he once knew. But in her eyes he still saw the cracks of the past. The fleeting glances she stole at him, as if searching for something, made his heart ache. He wanted to reach out and ask about the years gone by, and why she left without explanation. But fear that the truth would hurt even more kept him rooted. His hands clenched in his pockets. Maya said, "You don't have to stay long." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Lily's doing better thanks to you. We're very grateful." Her words felt like a farewell, but Alexander wasn't ready to leave. Not now, when his heart was torn between love and pain, the longing to be near her and the fear of rejection. "I'll come back," he said, his voice steadier than he expected. "I want to know how Lily's doing." But they both knew it wasn't just about Lily. Something deeper, an invisible thread, was pulling him toward Maya and the children, though he couldn't yet understand what it was. As Maya nodded, her eyes flashing with an unnameable emotion, Alexander turned to leave. His steps were heavy, as if carrying the weight of the past and unanswered questions. He didn't know that in that room, Maya was wrestling with herself, with memories of him and the secrets she had kept buried for 6 long years. In the days following the fateful hospital encounter, Alexander felt his heart trapped in an inescapable whirlpool. Work meetings numbers, once his entire world, now seemed like faded streaks of color, unable to overshadow the image of Maya and her children. Each night, as the city lights glimmered outside his office window, her silhouette appeared in his mind with her gentle smile and wounded eyes. He knew he could no longer hide and let the past imprison his heart. Alexander began visiting the hospital more frequently, using the excuse of checking on Lily's condition. But deep down, he knew the real reason was Maya. Each time he stepped into that small room, his heart stirred like a clumsy musician, trying to rediscover a lost melody. Today, he brought a brown teddy bear with sparkling glass eyes, hoping it would bring a smile to Lily's face. But as he pushed open the door, he found Maya alone sitting by the girl's bed, her gaze tinged with sadness as she looked out the window. Alexander, she started slightly upon seeing him, her hand instinctively clutching the hem of her sweater. "You're here again." Her voice was soft, but there was a faint tremble, as if she were trying to conceal her emotions. He nodded, placing the teddy bear beside Lily, his eyes briefly lingering on the girl's peaceful, sleeping face. He said, "I wanted to bring her a little joy," his voice low, but his gaze settled on Maya, searching for something in her eyes. Maya smiled a faint smile that was enough to make his heart ache. "Lily will love it. She adores teddy bears." She gently stroked the girl's hair, her gesture as tender as an autumn breeze. Alexander stood there quietly watching, feeling an unfamiliar warmth seep into his heart. He wanted to be part of this moment, to share the burdens Maya had carried alone for years. But he knew an invisible wall still stood between them, built from the misunderstandings and hurts of the past. In the following days, Alexander became familiar with the hospital room. He brought storybooks, toys, and sometimes the pastries he remembered Maya used to love. Each time she opened the pastry box, her eyes sparkled with surprise and emotion, as if she hadn't expected him to remember such small details. Their conversations started with casual questions about Lily's health, the weather, or trivial matters. But gradually they grew longer, deeper, like two lost souls finding their way back to each other. One afternoon, as the sunset bathed the room in golden light, Alexander sat in the chair beside Lily's bed, facing Maya. She told him about the first time Lily tried to tie her shoelaces, her voice lively like a melody. "She's stubborn, insisting on doing it herself, even though the laces were undone." Maya laughed, her eyes brightening as she spoke of her daughter. Alexander listened, his heart melting at her warmth. He wanted to tell her how much he missed her and had never stopped loving her, but he only smiled, keeping those words locked in his heart. "You're an incredible mother," he said, his voice hoarse. The word "you" slipping out unconsciously in the intimate tone he once used. Maya looked up, her eyes wavering, as if the word had touched a hidden corner of her heart. She didn't respond. She only lowered her gaze, her hands clasped tightly, as if wrestling with herself. Alexander sensed her silence and knew he needed to be patient to give her time to heal the wounds he had helped inflict. As he left the hospital, Alexander felt his heart both heavy and light. He knew his love for Maya had never faded despite time and distance trying to tear them apart. Each time he saw her, a part of himself came alive again, as if she were the breeze, rekindling a flame that had gone out within him. But he also knew that reaching her heart again would not be easy. She had become a strong woman and a resilient single mother, and he, despite being a powerful billionaire, was just a man standing before her with a heart full of regret. He stepped out of the hospital, the fiery sunset like a promise. Even if Maya had a family and might belong to someone else, Alexander couldn't stop his heart from calling her name. He would keep coming back, not just for Lily, but for himself, for a chance to heal old wounds, and perhaps to reclaim the love he had once lost. The midday sunlight filtered through the hospital's glass windows, scattering shimmering patches of light across the floor like fragments of an unfulfilled dream. Alexander sat in the familiar chair beside Lily's bed, holding a picture book he had brought, his warm, deep voice reading tales of adventurous rabbits. Though still weak, Lily was more alert, her large round eyes sparkling with delight and occasionally giggling. Maya sat nearby, her gaze tenderly following her daughter, but now and then it drifted toward Alexander, as if searching for something within him. Over the past few days, Alexander had become an indispensable part of this hospital room. He came daily bringing small gifts from cookies. Lily loved to books he hoped would brighten her world. But above all, he came for Maya. Though he tried to keep his distance to hide the heart that raced every time he saw her each moment, with her only deepened his feelings. He knew he had no right to expect anything, not when he believed she had a family, another man by her side. Yet his heart, like a lost wanderer, couldn't stop yearning to be near her again. Today the room was livelier than usual. The other 5 children, Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma, gathered around Lily's bed like a flock of chirping birds. Ethan, the eldest, was animatedly recounting a self-invented adventure story, making the group erupt in laughter. Noah, quieter, was meticulously folding a paper crane for his sister. Liam, Ava, and Emma vied to share tales of their school pranks. Alexander watched them, his heart warmed by their innocence, yet a quiet ache stirred. He couldn't help but wonder if he might have been part of this family portrait, without the misunderstanding years ago. A young nurse named Ha, who often cared for Lily, entered with a tray of medical supplies. She flashed a bright smile, eyes scanning the children before settling on Alexander. "Wow, the whole family's here today," she chirped. "Looking at these kids, I could swear they're Mr. Vung's cousins. They look so alike." She laughed as if it were a casual remark, but her words struck Alexander's mind like lightning. He froze his gaze, instinctively sweeping over each child. Ethan with his dark brown hair and sharp eyes. Noah with his thoughtful furrowed brow. Liam with his radiant smile. Ava and Emma with their long curved lashes. And Lily with her delicate face, like a miniature version of Maya, but with something like him. Alexander's heart pounded, like he had just stumbled upon a buried secret. The nurse's offhand comment was like a wind blowing away the dust covering doubts he had tried to suppress. Maya, folding a small cloth, stiffened at Ha's words. Her hands trembled slightly, her eyes darting to Alexander with a fleeting trace of panic, but she quickly regained her composure, forcing a strained smile. "What a funny thing to say, Ha," she said, trying to sound natural. "Kids always look a bit alike, don't they?" But Alexander caught the tension in her voice, as if she were hiding something. Ha, unaware of the shift in the atmosphere, laughed heartily. "No, really. The noses, the chins of these kids. It's like they were molded from the same cast as Mr. Vung. If I didn't know better, I'd think he was—" She stopped, realizing she might have said too much, and quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, I'm off to check some charts. Lily looks great today." She left, leaving Alexander and Maya in a stifling silence. Alexander's mind reeled. He looked at each child, searching for traces of himself in their faces. Suddenly, the scattered pieces in his mind began to come together. Maya had left 6 years ago after their painful parting. These children, aged 5 to 6, matched that timeline. Could it be? The thought took his breath away, a mix of hope and fear. He wanted to ask Maya to confront the truth, but her guarded, wounded eyes made him hesitate. Instead, he decided to act in secret. When Maya stepped out to get water for Lily, Alexander quietly picked up a small strand of hair from the girl's pillow. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but he only needed answers. He would find a lab and do whatever it took to uncover the truth. But as he stood, Ethan's eyes, the eldest boy's sharp, contemplative gaze, met his. Those eyes, piercing and thoughtful, were like a mirror reflecting Alexander himself. His heart trembled, as if he stood before a door leading to a secret that could change his life. The days passed like a fever dream, with Alexander caught between reality and the relentless resurgence of memories. He continued visiting the hospital daily, bringing small gifts for Lily and stories to brighten her eyes. But within him, a smoldering fire of curiosity and doubt had been ignited by Nurse Ha's offhand remark. The faces of Ethan Noah, Liam, Ava Emma, and Lily haunted him like pieces of a puzzle he wasn't ready to face. Were they a part of him, or merely an illusion painted by his yearning heart? Alexander had acted secretly, taking the strands of hair he collected from Lily and Ethan to a reputable lab. He hadn't told anyone, not even himself, what he hoped to find. But each night, as the city lights glimmered outside the windows of his cold penthouse, his heart raced faster, as if standing at a fateful crossroads. He feared the truth, yet craved it more than anything. That morning, the sky was overcast, mirroring Alexander's turbulent mind. He received a call from the lab. The technician's voice, cold but clear. "Mr. Vương, the results are ready. Please come to collect them in person." He nodded over the phone, feeling as if the world held its breath with him. His car glided through the bustling streets, but his mind was fixed on one destination, the truth awaiting him. Truth. The technician handed him a white envelope at the lab, her eyes curious but restrained. Alexander's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Numbers and scientific terms danced before his eyes, but the final line struck like a sharp blade through his heart. Probability of paternity: 99.999%. Not only Lily, but also Ethan, and through other samples he had secretly collected, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma were his children. And Emma. Time seemed to stop. Alexander sank into a chair, the test results slipping to the floor, but his eyes remained fixed on the words. 6 children. 6 lives he had been unaware of. He who once thought he held the world in his hands now realized he had missed the most precious thing, his children. And Maya, the woman he had loved more than himself, had borne it all alone, while he wallowed in pain and misunderstanding. He recalled the days after their breakup when he threw himself into work to forget the hurt. Sleepless nights, bitter bottles of whiskey, and dreams of Maya he tried to bury. He had blamed her, believed she betrayed him, and let jealousy cloud his reason. But now the truth burned through every belief he held. Maya hadn't just stayed faithful. She had quietly raised their 6 children, facing hardships he couldn't imagine. Alexander's heart ached, not only from the sudden joy of knowing he was a father, but also from the guilt gnawing at him. He had left Maya alone for 6 years, letting her endure sleepless nights of worry and days of struggle to raise the children he should have been there for. He thought of Lily, frail but radiant, and the innocent faces of Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma. They were his flesh and blood, yet he had never been a father to them. He left the lab, his steps heavy, as if carrying the world's weight. He clutched the paper tightly in the car, his eyes blurred by rare tears. He wasn't crying from sadness, but from a mix of happiness and pain. He wanted to rush to the hospital to embrace Maya and their children, to apologize for all he had done wrong. But he knew this truth was too vast, too complex to resolve in a single moment. When he arrived at the hospital, Maya was sitting by Lily, reading a story in her gentle voice. Her eyes lit up when she saw him, but quickly turned wary, as if sensing a change in him. "Alexander, are you okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. He looked at her, his heart on the verge of bursting. He wanted to tell her everything about the test results, the emotions surging within him, but he only smiled, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine. I just wanted to be here with Lily and you." He sat down, his gaze never leaving Maya. In that moment, he realized that no matter how painful the truth, he would not lose her or their children again. But he also knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, with old wounds still waiting to be healed. The rain fell lightly outside the hospital window, droplets sliding down the glass like tears from the sky, blending with Alexander's tumultuous emotions. He sat in the small room, his gaze heavy with feeling, watching Maya gently tuck the blanket around Lily. The DNA test results, like an earthquake, still reverberated in his mind. 6 children, Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, Emma, and Lily, were his flesh and blood, pieces of him he had been unaware of for 6 long years. But beyond the unexpected joy, the pain of realizing Maya had borne it all alone, while he wallowed in misunderstanding and selfishness, cut deeply. Alexander knew he couldn't keep this secret forever. The truth, however painful, needed to be laid bare so they could confront it and find a way to heal. He took a deep breath, steadying his racing heart, and spoke, his voice low but resolute. "Maya, we need to talk." Maya looked up, a flicker of panic crossing her eyes, as if she sensed what was coming. She nodded, signaling the nurse to watch Lily, and followed Alexander into the hallway. Under the cold white lights, they stood facing each other, only a few steps apart, separated by an ocean of time and hurt. Maya crossed her arms, her eyes glistening, but wary. "What is it, Alexander?" she asked softly, as if afraid a single wrong word could shatter their fragile balance. Summoning all his courage, he pulled the test results from his pocket, his hands trembling slightly as he handed them to her. I had a DNA test done. Lily, Ethan, and the other children. They're mine, aren't they?" His voice broke not from doubt, but from the emotions surging within. He looked into her eyes, searching for confirmation, a sign that she wouldn't run from this truth. Maya took the paper, her eyes scanning the lines, and her shoulders began to tremble. Tears fell silently, glimmering on her smooth, dusk-like skin like pearls. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold back, but her voice quivered as she spoke. Why did you do this behind my back?" There was a hint of reproach in her words, but more than that, a deep pain, as if an old wound had been reopened. "I needed to know the truth," Maya Alexander replied, his voice hoarse with regret. "I couldn't live with the doubts or pretend I didn't see how much they look like me." He stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "Tell me, Maya, why didn't you say anything? Why did you let me live in the dark for 6 years? Maya turned away, tears falling faster like the rain outside. She took a deep breath, her voice soft but firm. "When I found out I was pregnant, you had already left me, Alexander. I called you. I stood in the rain for hours, but you didn't listen. I thought you didn't love me anymore, that you'd chosen to forget me. I didn't want our children to grow up with their father's rejection, so I raised them on my own." Her words cut into Alexander like a sharp blade. He remembered that night, seeing her leave the hotel with that man. Jealousy had clouded his reason, making him turn away without giving her a chance to explain. "Maya, that man that night," he faltered, his voice catching. "I thought you betrayed me. I saw you with him, and I couldn't bear it." Maya looked up, her eyes wide with shock and pain. "Betrayed, Alexander? That was David, my best friend. He was helping me with an art project. I never imagined you'd think that." Her voice broke, tears streaming down her face. "I tried to explain, but you didn't give me a chance. You walked away, and I thought I'd lost you forever." Alexander felt the world around him crumble. That one moment of misunderstanding had stolen 6 years from them, robbed him of the chance to be a father, to be with her. He stepped forward, wanting to hold her, to soothe the pain they had both endured. But Maya stepped back, her arms wrapped around herself like a shield. "Don't, Alexander," she whispered. "I need time. This truth, it's too much, too—" He nodded, though his heart felt crushed. "I'm sorry, Maya. I was wrong, and I'll do anything to make it up to you. Not just to you, but to our children." He looked at her, his eyes painfully sincere. I don't know how to be a father, but I want to learn. If you let me, I want to be part of their lives. And yours." Maya didn't respond. She only quietly wiped her tears. She turned to look through the glass at Lily sleeping peacefully. Alexander knew the path to healing these wounds would not be easy, but at that moment, he vowed never to walk away from her or their children again. The gentle dawn light filtered through the trees outside the hospital, casting soft golden patches along the corridor like whispers of hope. Alexander stood at the door of Lily's room, clutching a bouquet of white daisies. Maya's favorite flower, their delicate petals as fragile as his heart in this moment. After their tearful confrontation, he felt like a wanderer, standing before a newly opened door with a path of thorns ahead. The truth that the 6 children were his had changed everything, but it also forced him to face old wounds and the distance that time and misunderstanding had built between him and Maya. Maya sat by Lily's bed, her gaze tender, but tinged with sadness as she stroked the girl's hair. Lily was improving, her cheeks rosy and her smile returning, though she still needed time to recover fully. When Alexander entered, Maya looked up, her eyes flickering at the flowers in his hand. For Lily, she asked, her voice soft but cautious, as if she wasn't ready to lower the wall between them. "For both of you," Alexander replied, his voice warm, his eyes locked on hers. He placed the bouquet on the table, careful as if offering a piece of his heart. "I want to apologize, Maya, not just for what happened, but for the years I wasn't there for you and the children. I want to make it right, even though I know it won't be easy." Maya pressed her lips together, her hands tightening on the hem of her sweater, as if wrestling with the emotions surging within. "I don't blame you, Alexander," she said, trembling. "But these past years, I learned to live without you. I did everything to give the kids a good life, even without you. Now, I don't know how to open my heart again." Her words cut like a sharp blade, but Alexander understood they weren't rejection, but the fear of a heart once broken. He sat across from her, his eyes painfully sincere. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I'm only asking for a chance to be a father to our children, and be by your side even just as a friend." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I was wrong to let a misunderstanding tear us apart. But now, knowing about the kids, I can't turn my back again." Maya looked at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She knew he was sincere, but her heart remained guarded after years of carrying the weight alone. "The kids, they don't know anything about you," she whispered. "I don't want them to get hurt, hope, and be disappointed." Her words stung, but Alexander nodded, his resolve growing stronger. "Then let me start from the beginning," he said. "Let me get to know them. Let them know who I am. I won't force anything, Maya. I want to be part of their lives, and yours." Maya didn't answer immediately, her gaze drifting to Lily, then out the window where sunlight danced on the leaves. After a moment of silence, she nodded slightly. "All right," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But go slowly, Alexander, for the kids and us." Alexander began his journey in the following days, taking small steps to grow closer to Maya and their children. He visited the hospital more often, not just for Lily, but for the others too. The eldest, Ethan, was initially wary, but gradually warmed to the adventure stories Alexander shared. Noah, quiet and sensitive, opened up when Alexander gave him a complex puzzle set. With their childlike innocence, Liam, Ava, and Emma quickly saw him as a big friend who brought surprises and warm smiles. Maya watched from a distance, her heart wavering between joy and fear. She saw how patiently Alexander played with the children, how gently he answered their innocent questions, and how he looked at her with love but without pressure. In moments when their eyes met, she felt her heart melt, as if the love from years ago had never left. But then memories of that rainy night abandonment and years of solitude made her hesitate. One afternoon, as Alexander helped Ava paint a vibrant picture, Maya stood quietly by the door, watching him with the children. She realized he was trying his hardest to make amends, no matter how painful the past. And perhaps she too needed to learn to forgive, not just him, but herself. She knew this healing journey would take time, but in Alexander's sincere eyes, she began to see a glimmer of hope like dawn breaking after a long night. The soft autumn sunlight bathed the small park beside the hospital, where golden leaves fell gently, like petals of the season. Alexander stood on the lush green grass, holding a red ball, his eyes lighting up as he watched 5 of his children, Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma, darting around with excitement. Though still frail, Lily had been wheeled out to enjoy the fresh air, her eyes sparkling as she watched her siblings play. Maya stood a short distance away, arms crossed, a gentle smile on her lips, but her gaze held a hint of caution, as if weighing each of Alexander's steps on his journey to reach her and their children's hearts. After their tearful conversation, Alexander had become a steady presence in the children's lives. He didn't push or demand to be called Dad, but quietly showed up, bringing moments of joy and genuine care. He wanted the children to feel his love before learning the truth, to build a bond through smiles and memories, rather than heavy explanations. Today he had suggested a short trip to the park to give Lily a change of scenery, and to grow closer to the little pieces of his life. Ethan passed the ball to me. Alexander called his voice warm, but enthusiastic. Ethan, the eldest, with sharp eyes, furrowed his brow, as if considering, then threw the ball with more force than necessary. Alexander caught it, laughing loudly, and tossed it back more gently, a subtle reminder that he wasn't a rival, but a friend. Ethan, though still serious, began to relax, the corner of his mouth curling up as the ball went back and forth between them. Noah, quieter, sat on the grass, carefully folding a paper crane. Alexander approached, sitting beside him, his gaze gentle. "You've made so many cranes already. They look like a flock ready to take flight." Noah looked up, his eyes brightening slightly, then shyly handed him a crane. He said, "This is for you," his voice small but sincere. Alexander took it, his heart melting. He knew Noah was reserved, and this small gift was a significant step for the boy. Liam, Ava, and Emma, more carefree, pulled Alexander into a game of tag. Their laughter rang out like wind chimes, filling the air with life. Alexander chased them, deliberately slowing down so they could win, and each time they cheered, he felt a piece of his heart mend. He glanced at Maya, who was pushing Lily's wheelchair, her eyes gleaming as she watched the children play. In a fleeting moment their gazes met, and Alexander saw a spark of warmth, as if she was slowly accepting his presence. "Lily, want to try?" Alexander turned to the little girl, rolling the ball gently across the grass. Lily smiled, her small hands clumsily reaching for it. "Uncle Alex is so good," she chirped, her clear voice making him laugh. Uncle, the word stung sweet, yet bitter. He wanted to be Dad, but he knew it would take time, that the children needed to open their hearts first. Maya stood quietly watching Alexander play with the children. She saw how patiently he handled Ethan, how he encouraged Noah, how he made Ava and Emma giggle, and how gentle he was with Lily. Her heart, still scarred from the past, couldn't deny that he was trying his hardest. She remembered the old days when he was the man who made her feel safe, who inspired dreams of a joyful future. But she also recalled the long nights holding her children alone, the days she forced herself to push through hardship. Could she trust him again? As the sun set, Alexander suggested they stop for ice cream. He bought colorful cones, carefully choosing strawberry for Lily, because he knew she loved it. The children sat around a wooden table, chattering happily, while Maya sat nearby, her eyes flicking to Alexander with a touch of gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, as the kids were busy with their treats. The kids. They're pleased today. Alexander looked at her, his eyes painfully sincere. I want them to be happy, Maya, and I want you to be satisfied. He paused, taking a deep breath. I know I can't erase the years that have passed, but I want to be part of this future if you'll let me. Maya didn't answer immediately, her gaze lingering on the children, before turning to him, her eyes softer than ever. We'll take it one step at a time, Alexander, she said, her voice quiet but filled with hope for the kids. And in that moment, under the radiant golden sunset, Alexander knew that though the road ahead was long, he had begun to reclaim the pieces of the family he had once lost. Night fell, draping the city in a shimmering black veil of twinkling lights like lost stars in the sky. Alexander sat in his vast penthouse, his gaze distant as he looked through the glass window where the bustling city failed to soothe his turmoil. Over the past days, he had taken steps into the lives of Maya and their children, each moment with them, a precious gem filling the voids he once thought would remain empty forever. But the closer he got, the more he felt the invisible wall between him and Maya, a barrier built from old wounds, her caution, and lingering doubts. That day at the hospital, Alexander arrived with a box of fragrant cookies, the kind Lily and her siblings loved. The small room was filled with laughter as the children shared the treats. Ethan animatedly recounted school stories, while Ava and Emma playfully drew hearts from each other's hands with crayons. Though still frail, Lily could sit up, her eyes lighting up when she saw Alexander. Uncle Alex, tell the bunny story again, she chirped, her clear voice like wind chimes. Alexander smiled, settling beside her bed, launching into the familiar tale he had memorized through repetition. But his eyes occasionally drifted to Maya, who stood by the window, her gaze distant as if lost in another world. She had agreed to let him grow close to the children, but whenever he tried to reach further to touch her heart, she pulled back like a bird, afraid of being hurt again. He understood, but her silence pierced his heart, as if each step forward carried the fear of losing her again. As the children were engrossed in their games, Alexander approached Maya, his voice low and sincere. Maya, are you okay? You seem distant lately. He chose his words carefully, not wanting to pressure her, but his heart yearned for an answer, a sign that there was still a place for him in her life. Maya turned to him, her eyes glistening under the light, betraying a sadness she couldn't hide. I'm delicate, Alexander said, her voice soft but firm. It's just, all of this, you, the kids, the past, it's too much for me to process right now. She paused, taking a deep breath. You're good to the kids, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm scared that if I open my heart, I'll get hurt again. Her words were like a cold breeze cutting through Alexander's heart. He wanted to hold her, to promise he'd never cause her pain again, but he knew such promises now were mere empty sounds. He had hurt her once, abandoned her when she needed him most. Maya, he said, his voice hoarse, I know I don't deserve your trust right now, but I swear, I'll do everything to prove I've changed. Maya looked at him, her eyes wavering between pain and a faint glimmer of hope. I don't doubt your sincerity, Alexander, she whispered. But my heart, it's been broken too many times. I'm not just the Maya from before. I'm a mother to 6 children. I have to think of them, protect them, and protect myself. Alexander nodded, though his heart felt heavy. He understood her fear, understood that 6 years alone had forged her into a resilient but cautious woman. Yet it didn't deter him. He wanted to prove he wasn't just the man from the past, but a father, a friend, and perhaps one day someone she could love again. Within him another battle raged. He questioned whether he deserved this chance, and whether a man who let jealousy and misunderstanding destroy his love could become a pillar for Maya and their children. He looked at Lily, at how she held his hand with innocent trust, and thought of Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma children, who carried his blood, but didn't yet know him as their father. Could he make up for the lost years? Could he become the father they needed? As he left the hospital, Alexander walked under a star-filled sky, his heart brimming with resolve, but tinged with doubts. He knew this journey wouldn't be easy, that Maya needed time to heal and prove he was worthy of her trust. But in the children's eyes and smiles, he found the reason to keep going. Though Maya's heart remained guarded, he believed that with patience and love, he could see the path to her, to the family he had once dreamed of. The sunset bathed the vast grassy field in golden hues, where gentle breezes carried the scent of wild grass and memories. Alexander stood amidst the open space, his gaze soft as he watched the children. Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma running and laughing, their voices ringing out like a melody of childhood. Lily, seated in a small wheelchair, beamed brightly, her tiny hands reaching out, as if to catch the butterflies fluttering nearby. Today was special, the first time the entire family left the hospital for a picnic, organized by Alexander, to bring joy to the children, and deep down, to close the gap with Maya. Maya stood a short distance away, a thin scarf draped over her shoulders, her curly hair gently swaying in the breeze. She watched the children, her eyes brimming with love. But when her gaze met Alexander's, a complex flicker of emotion passed through, warm, yet hesitant. Over the past few days, she had seen him transform from the cold man of the past to a patient father, a friend always ready to listen. But her heart, though stirred, remained tethered by old scars, memories of the rainy night when he turned his back on her. Alexander approached her holding 2 cups of juice, offering one with a gentle smile. "I thought you'd like strawberry," he said, his voice warm, his eyes gleaming as if wanting to say more. Maya took the cup, her fingers brushing against his, and in that moment, both felt a spark, as if time had rewound to the days when they belonged to each other. "Thank you," Maya said softly, her eyes drifting to the field where the children played. "The kids are so happy today. It's been a while since they've been out like this." She paused, taking a deep breath as if searching for words to continue. "And so am I." "I didn't expect you to do this, Alexander." He looked at her, his heart pounding at her words. "I want to bring happiness to the kids and to you, Maya," he said, his voice painfully sincere. "I know I missed so much and hurt you deeply, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you belonged to someone else, my heart still called your name." His confession was like a strong wind blowing against the wall Maya had built around her heart. She turned to him, her eyes wide, shimmering with tears. "Alexander," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you don't understand. These past years, I tried to forget you, to live for the kids. But every time I looked at them, I saw you in Ethan's eyes, in Lily's smile. I tried to be strong, but I'm tired. I'm scared. Scared that if I open my heart, I'll lose everything again." Alexander stepped closer, his gaze locked on her, as if wanting to embrace all her pain. "Maya, I won't let you lose anything ever again," he said, his voice trembling but resolute. "I was wrong, and I'll spend my life making it up to you. I'm not promising you the world, but I promise you and the kids a home, where you don't have to carry everything alone." Maya pressed her lips together, silent tears glimmering on her smooth, dusk-like skin. She wanted to believe him, to let her heart love freely again, but fear clung to her. She turned away, trying to hide her emotions, but Alexander gently took her hand, not forcing, just enough for her to feel his sincerity. "You don't have to answer now," he said. "Just give me a chance to prove I'm worthy." She didn't pull away, letting his hand envelop hers, and in that moment, she felt a part of herself begin to heal. They stood there amidst the sunlit field with the children's laughter as a backdrop, like two lost souls finally finding each other. Maya looked at him, her eyes softer than ever, and though she didn't say it, Alexander knew she was starting to open her heart, even if just a crack. The family gathered around a large blanket, sharing sandwiches and joyful stories as the sun set. Alexander sat beside Maya, their shoulders brushing, and though they didn't speak further, their silence was no longer heavy. It was like a silent promise that they would move forward together, step by step, to heal old wounds and rebuild what was lost. Under the fiery red sky, Alexander felt his heart lighten, as if he had finally found the path to the home he had always dreamed of. The sky over Tum An Hospital was draped in gray clouds, mirroring the anxieties swirling in Alexander and Maya's hearts. The small room where Lily lay was thick with tension. The steady hum of machines couldn't drown out Dr. Lin's trembling voice as she entered, clutching a chart tightly. "Ms. Maya, Mr. Vương," she said, her eyes heavy. "Lily's condition has worsened. We need to perform an emergency surgery. Without it, I'm afraid her time may be short." Her words struck like a sharp blade, slicing through Alexander's heart. He looked at Maya, who stood frozen, her hands clenched so tightly they turned pale, her eyes wide, glistening with tears, but resolute. "The surgery, is it risky?" she asked, her voice soft, but unable to hide her fear. Dr. Lin sighed, explaining that the surgery was Lily's only chance, but the risks loomed like a dark shadow over them. Alexander felt his heart constrict. Lily, the little girl with a clear smile and star-bright eyes, was part of his blood, a piece he had only found. The thought of losing her was unbearable, especially when he hadn't yet had the chance to be her father, to tell her how much he loved her. He stepped to Maya's side, gently placing a hand on her shoulder, saying nothing, only wanting her to feel that she wasn't facing this pain alone. Maya turned to him, her eyes wavering between despair and hope. "I can't lose Lily, Alexander," she whispered, her voice breaking. "She's my light, the light of her siblings. If anything happens..." She didn't finish, tears falling silently, shimmering on her smooth, dusk-like skin like pearls. Alexander pulled her into his arms, the first time since their reunion, and she didn't push him away. She let him hold her, her tears soaking into his shirt, as if sharing a piece of the burden she had carried for years. "We'll get through this, Maya," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Lily will be okay, and I'll be here with you with the kids no matter what happens." He felt her body tremble in his embrace, but she nodded as if drawing a sliver of strength from his presence. In that moment, amidst fear and pain, they became each other's anchor, like two puzzle pieces finally finding their place after years apart. The hours waiting for the surgery dragged like an endless nightmare. Alexander and Maya sat in the waiting room, surrounded by Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma, their young faces heavy with worry. Ethan, the eldest, tried to appear strong, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Noah clung tightly to Ava's hand, while Liam and Emma nestled into Maya's arms, seeking comfort. Alexander sat beside them, telling stories to soothe them, but he too battled the fear within. He looked at Maya, watching her hold the children's hands, her gaze steadfast despite trembling fingers, and he couldn't help but admire her strength, the woman who had raised 6 children alone and was now fighting to keep their light alive. When Dr. Lin emerged, her face weary, but bearing a faint smile, Alexander and Maya nearly leapt. "The surgery was successful," she said, her voice like a breeze dispersing dark clouds. "Lily is stable, but will need time to recover." Maya threw her arms around the children, tears falling, but this time from joy. Alexander stood still, feeling as if the world had been given back to him. He looked at Maya, seeing her turn to him, her eyes shining with profound gratitude. "You stayed," she said, her voice soft but meaningful. "You didn't leave, not for a moment." Her words were like a bridge drawing them closer than ever. Alexander took her hand, needing no promises, only his gaze to vow he would never leave her or their children again. In the recovery room, as they were allowed to visit Lily, Alexander and Maya stood by her bed, watching her sleep peacefully. Maya took his hand the first time she had done so on her own, and he felt his heart melt. This trial, though painful, had bound them together like an invisible thread tying together souls once lost. Alexander knew that from now on, the path ahead wouldn't just be about healing and building a family where Maya and their children would face every storm together. The soft, early winter sunlight filtered through the recovery room's window, casting warm rays across Lily's delicate face, now rosier after her successful surgery. The little girl lay in bed, her large round eyes sparkling as she looked at Alexander and Maya, who stood side by side, hand in hand, like two puzzle pieces, finally finding their place. In the past days, through the storm of fear and hope, Alexander and Maya had faced their greatest challenge, not only to save Lily, but to find each other again, to heal the wounds carved deep by time and misunderstanding. The small room was filled with the clear laughter of Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma, who gathered around their sister's bed, vying to share stories of school and their playful antics. Alexander watched them, his heart warmed by a fire he thought had long gone out. He had once been a man living in solitude, burying himself in work to forget his pain, but now he stood here surrounded by a family he never dared dream would be his. Maya stood beside him, her hand resting comfortably in his, warm and soft, like a silent promise that she was ready to open her heart. In the days following their shared ordeal over Lily, she had seen in Alexander not just the man who had hurt her, but a devoted father, a partner ready to share her burdens. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with a tenderness he hadn't seen in years. "You've done more than I ever thought possible, Alexander," she said, her voice soft but full of emotion. "You've been here for the kids, for me. I don't know how to thank you." Alexander turned to her, his gaze locking onto hers as if etching every feature of her face into his heart. "Maya, you don't need to thank me," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "I'm the one who needs to thank you for raising our children and for keeping them safe, even when I wasn't there. I was wrong, and I don't want to waste another second making it up to you and the kids." He paused, taking a deep breath, as if gathering all his courage to say what he had held in his heart for so long. He knelt before her in front of the surprised gazes of their children and held her hands tightly. "Maya, I know I can't erase the years we were apart, but I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy, being a father to our children, building the family we once dreamed of. Will you give me that chance?" Tears fell silently down Maya's cheeks, but this time, not from pain, but from overwhelming joy. She looked into his eyes, seeing not only love, but a sincerity and determination she thought had been lost. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold back her emotions, but then nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, Alexander, I will, for the kids and us." The children's cheers erupted a symphony of joy. Despite his usual seriousness, Ethan ran to hug Alexander, while Noah, Liam, Ava, and Emma jumped with delight, giggling. From her bed, Lily reached out her small hand toward him, her voice clear. "Uncle Alex, you'll stay with us forever." Alexander smiled, his eyes glistening with tears as he took her hand. "Yes, Lily, I'll stay forever." He stood, pulling Maya into his arms, and this time she didn't pull away. She rested her head against his chest, feeling his heart beat vigorously, like a vow that he would never leave. The children surrounded them, embracing both, forming a warm circle, where all pain seemed to melt away. Alexander felt his heart overflow, as if all the lonely years, the nights of regret, were repaid in this moment. Under the soft golden sunlight, they stood together, a family reunited after countless storms. Alexander looked at Maya, seeing in her eyes not a trace of pain, but a spark of hope, of love rekindled. He knew challenges lay ahead, but he was ready to face anything with her and their children by his side. This family, he vowed, would be the place he devoted his life to protecting and loving. The first rays of dawn spilled over the small house nestled along a tree-lined street, where phoenix flower petals fell gently like tender fragments of memory. The house, with its white walls and rustic wooden fence, was the home Alexander and Maya had built together, not with wealth or power, but with love, forgiveness, and the laughter of their 6 children: Ethan, Noah, Liam, Ava, Emma, and Lily. After months of storms, they had found a peaceful shore where old wounds were healed and dreams once shattered were now rewoven with threads of hope. That morning, Alexander woke early, his gaze softening as he watched Maya sleep peacefully beside him. Her curly hair spilled across the pillow, her smooth, dusk-like skin glowing under the sunlight like a painting he never wanted to look away from. He gently brushed her hair, his heart filled with profound gratitude. Just months ago, he was a solitary man, living in a cold penthouse, burying himself in work to escape the voids within. But now he had her, their children, a family, the most precious thing he thought he'd lost forever. The clear laughter of the children echoed from the backyard, pulling Alexander from his thoughts. He stepped downstairs, seeing Ethan teaching Noah to kick a soccer ball, while Liam, Ava, and Emma built a small sandcastle. Lily, now healthy, ran and played with her siblings, her cheeks rosy and her smile radiant as the sun. "Dad, play with us," she called, her voice bright, melting Alexander's heart. The word dad, a word he once thought he'd never hear, was now the greatest gift, ringing out daily as a reminder of what he had reclaimed. Maya appeared at the back door holding a tray of cool lemonade, her eyes sparkling as she watched the family gather together. She set the tray down, sitting beside Alexander on a wooden bench, their shoulders touching, as if they had never been apart. "Look at them," she said, her voice gentle. "How happy the kids are. I never thought we'd be here like this." She turned to him, her eyes brimming with love, free of the shadows of past pain. Alexander took her hand, intertwining their fingers as if to hold her forever in his heart. "Maya, it's all because of you," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "You gave me the chance to make things right, to be the father, the husband I always wanted to be. I promise I'll spend my life loving and protecting you and the kids." He leaned down, kissing her forehead softly, and Maya smiled, resting her head on his shoulder, feeling a peace she thought she'd never find again. They sat there amidst the children's laughter and birds chirping like two souls who had finally found their harbor. The painful days, the misunderstandings, the years apart, were now just faded memories replaced by the warmth of the present. Alexander looked at his children, seeing in them his blood and the dreams and hopes he and Maya had sown together. Ethan with his strength, Noah with his sensitive heart, Liam with his radiant smile, Ava and Emma with their innocence, and Lily with her fierce vitality were proof of the love he and Maya had rediscovered. As the sun rose higher, the family gathered around an outdoor table, sharing pancakes Maya had made and the children's innocent stories. Alexander looked at Maya, seeing her radiant smile, and knew this was the happiness he had sought his entire life. Not towering skyscrapers or business empires, but this house, her and their children, these simple moments overflowing with love. Under the brilliant golden sunlight, Alexander stood, pulling Maya into his arms, and before the curious eyes of their children, he whispered in her ear, "Thank you for giving me this entire world." Maya smiled, embracing him, and in that moment, they knew that no matter how painful the past, their future would be a canvas painted with love and forgiveness. If you followed Alexander and Maya's emotional journey, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts and stay tuned for more beautiful love stories. Like the dawn, love always finds a way to shine after the longest, darkest nights.